Hello, and welcome to Ad Age's custom webcast, sponsored by VMLY&R. The topic of today's webcast is the case for change, navigating the experience era. I'm Christopher Hosford with the Ad Age team, and we have just a few things to go over before we begin. We'll hear from today's presenters, and then we'll open the floor to your questions. Now, to participate in the Q&A portion of the webcast, all you have to do is type your text into the Ask a Question text area and hit the send button, and we'll address as many of them as possible at the end of our presenters' remarks. Now let's get started. I'd like to introduce our presenters today. Billy Jackson is Vice President of Precision Marketing at Conagra Brands, with more than 20 years of marketing experience at such companies as Kellogg's, Nissan, and McDonald's. Hello, Delu. Welcome. We also have Francesca Perotti, who is Vice President Global Consumer and Small Business Marketing at Dell Technologies, herself with 20 years of experience in consumer and trade marketing and brand management. Welcome, Francesca. And David Schulman, who is Chief Experience Officer at VMLY&R, who's charged with growing the agency's experience practice in North America and globally, helping brands transform themselves via customer experience. David, I think you're up first, so take it away.
Chris, thank you, and hello, everyone. We're so pleased to be here. I want to say thank you to the entire Ad Age team for the partnership to bring this panel together. Thank you to my panelists, Delu from Conagra and Francesca. Thank you for joining us from Dell. We are really excited. And to dive in, I'm gonna switch into slide mode here, and we are going to chat for a moment about a few things that are inspiring to us. In my role as head of experience, I get to work with some of our largest global clients at VMLY&R. Really excited to think about all the activities happening across the portfolio of clients. And we work across healthcare and pharma, CPG, auto, really nearly every vertical in every category. And when we think about customer experience and navigating the experience era, it can be overwhelming. In fact, there are so many elements that make up experience. I've listed just a handful on this page that can quickly become a difficult conversation to grasp. And so we're going to touch on many of these today. But really the guidance I have for people who are getting into customer experience or looking to advance customer experience is really to think about each component as an individual ingredient, not trying to optimize ingredients individually in siloed fashion, but really how those ingredients come together, almost as if we're making a meal to bring those ingredients together. Ultimately, it's about change. Change to drive transformation through experience really means adding new brand skill sets, adding new skill sets of talent, new ways of working, new expertise around each of these different elements, but again, how they come together. And so I'm going to speak for a moment about change. I think that's really a key thing that we'll address throughout the next hour. I'm reminded of Charles Darwin's quote, "It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change." We all know that we are transformation agents in the industry and for our brands and for our teams. But change can be difficult. In fact, if you look at behavioral science, we're reminded that humans are hardwired to resist change. We follow our habits. We look to find reinforcement of our current beliefs. And change can be quite difficult to tackle. If you look at change, it's oftentimes something that we think about happening over a period of long time, happening in small increments slowly. But there can be seismic changes that happen, things that speed up the pace of change. And those are things that we have to capitalize on, understand better, and lead through. We all are leading a time in this year, 2020, through a period of COVID-19. I call this a disruption effect. It's something that can really force us into new ways of thinking, of acting, of working, of being. If you think about those new ways of acting, I think this is a great example today. We are having a video conference. I asked Chris earlier how many of these panels he's led, and he had numerous panels, but this is the first time that he's leading one via video conference. I think for many of us today, this is a new way of engaging, but we're making it happen. It's happening at scale. We're finding new ways to engage in life, We're finding new ways to engage with doctors through virtual doctor visits, distance learning. Many of us have friends or perhaps children who are going back to university or to school doing this in a new way. And so it's really interesting to tackle this in a way that we understand we need to go through different ways of working, different ways of changing. And I believe that it's experience that allows us to really understand and thrive in new ways of living. I'm reminded of Confucius saying, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. That notion of we don't really understand something to experience it firsthand, but then we actually are able to thrive in new ways. As leaders, we have to get comfortable with that discomfort. This can be messy. The discussion we're going to have today is going to allow us to tackle that messiness, to help us understand that to create truly extraordinary solutions, to really navigate the experience era, requires us to not look for the easiest solutions, things that are proven, that already have results that can be safe for us, but to play in the space of disruption, to play in the space of new prototyping and trying new things, and really as leaders to drive through into the possibility of what is possible as we move from the left to the right, from the uncertain to the certain. And the last slide I'll share is, a really great quote that speaks right to this, Einstein's quote about, we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. And so that's really the notion for today. I'm going to switch over. I'm so pleased to welcome Delu and Francesca to join me for a series of questions and discussion, and then some audience questions. And really, let's dive in and talk about how we are navigating this experience era and how we are driving change and transformation, and specifically how Dell and Conagra are moving through that transformation. So thank you both. I think I'll kick off with a general question around transformation, and really, you both have been leading transformation agendas at your companies. Delu, I'll turn to you first. When you think about the agenda you're driving at Conagra, what does transformation mean to you? The upheaval of the last few months of this year certainly has thrown some unique challenges at you. Talk a bit about what you've been doing to drive transformation and change.
Sure. I think it's really important that the past few months have accelerated a lot of the transformations that we had started, right? The transformation elements, from new technologies to new ways of working to new products and services to provide that appropriate consumer experience. So what we saw in that acceleration, and most telling the transformation, was this big move in the change in size and scale of food and e-commerce, right? This idea that we have to think differently about how we leverage the assets of a traditional CPG company and CPG food company to take advantage and also service all those consumers and customers as that shift happened. The good news is we'd started on that journey with transformational technology, new ways of working, agile processes, and all the things you described, talent, new thinking processes, critical thinking processes that positioned us to take advantage of that opportunity and again, continue to service our business well. Along the way, as we leveraged the things that we were doing well, we've learned some new things that we need to do. But that adaptability and that new capability that we put in place positioned us well to service those requirements. So it's a continued process. And the other thing that's really, really key about transformation, it never stops. There's no end point. There's no time to rest. So we've learned that, again, it's just going to continue to accelerate.
I was on mute. Apologies. Francesca, Dell's a business that's really been built on transformation. It's something that you've disrupted and continue to disrupt the category to drive transformation. And I'm really curious what you've been doing in the last few months to drive transformation during such an incredibly difficult time.
Yeah, of course. And as the Lou mentioned, right, e-commerce has grown a lot, right? We have seen from the last couple of weeks, the earnings releases from Walmart, Best Buy, and other companies, that e-commerce has grown drastically in the last months, and even in a faster rate than before COVID, right? And that has changed drastically, right? We have seen also that business and institution has been implemented work from home solutions to help their business, right? And get their employees back to work quickly, right? And you mentioned at the beginning also that we have seen schools and universities that has been forced to implement remote learning or hybrid learning solutions, right? We are now seeing that some universities are implemented hybrid, others are going all directly to remote learning. So there's a couple of things that we are seeing right now, right? And if we took into our personal life what is going on, we're relying more into internet, right? Because we need to stay connected. We are using internet to shop, to work, to learn, and even to use it to date or even get married, right? We're seeing a lot of that going on, or even to go to prom, right? So all those things require business to change their strategy. So because of that, also looking into the lens of the consumer, we're seeing the consumer is also changing. That consumer behavior is changing, right? How they consume media is changing. And we are seeing that, for example, TV is growing tremendously. TV consumption is growing 35% year over year, and streaming is growing 2x what it was last year, right? So in order for us to reach our customer, we need to make sure that we do achieve in terms of media behavior, right? We need to make sure that we are where our customers are. So we have shifted from traditional media vehicles to more around video, streaming, and podcasts, right? That is the new trend. We are also shifting into more virtual launches and event experience. So, for example, we used to do a lot of product launches, and it was a big splash. But last May, we have to launch our Alienware laptop, right? And due to COVID, we were not able to launch as we usually did. So we have to pivot quickly and do a virtual launch event, right? Where we eventually send all the attendees were transported to a digital 3D animated Alienware world where they were interacted with our new products, right? And this type of event has been very successful. We never used it before, where now is something that we are leaning toward. And it has been very successful because now we are reaching to a wider audience that we were not used to. And also we are getting real-time feedback that is helping us to change our strategy, right? So due to this accelerated timeline on, I would say, digital transformation, we have been changing our whole campaigns that is focused on helping our customers, advising to show them that we are a partner and we are here for them.
That's great. And you talked about the changing customer expectations. You know, one of the things that I think we're all experiencing is how things like Amazon have changed our expectation of immediacy. It's something that really affects, our customers' expectation of each of our brands and how quickly we respond and how fast we give them what they're looking to get, whether it's a product or service. David, talk about what that means for you and how you're approaching speed in your business.
Sure. I think to build on your point there, the expectations are being changed by the consumer shift into those platforms. And as they provide not just the actual end product or service, but the information, the way they search for it, how quickly they get it, how it's organized, how they find solutions on those platforms, it redefines what we have to do across our experience network. And we've talked about our platform, Ready, Set, Eat, which started out as a recipe platform, but it leverages all of those experience cues on what's the right organization for the content, what's the right organization for the products, building in the ability to buy or shop now within our experiences and connecting that with those retail experiences that they're getting online and offline. That all has to be more integrated than ever because it's the same consumers. And we used to build what we called our brand experiences over here while they were experiencing something else over here. Those have all converged. And so it challenges us, and again, very much around this transformation, your dinner plate that you showed, is that we have to make the content right with the experience, with the technology, with the speed, with availability on mobile and on any device and all these things. Those all have to come together. And it's not just in our ecosystem that we have to take and learn the cues. It's how they experience that outside of our direct control as well. So that's led us to build platforms like Reddy said, Eat and continue to evolve them that leverage those cues and also share what we learn on our platforms back with those platforms for merchandising and communication and media and engagement for the consumer across that journey. So, and I have to say, it's a work in progress, but you can see that, again, we have better data than ever, we have better learning, and they're going to expect us to bring that together in a seamless manner. So.
Yeah, it's great. I love your point about all those experience touch points. There are ways in which our customers experience our brand, and they have to be united. Francesca, I know that at Dell, you've been focused a lot on uniting the efforts of your internal teams and breaking down silos within Dell to bring teams together to do just what Daly was mentioning. I wonder if you can talk about what it's taken to do that and how you have created that unified structure so that each component of the experience that the customer engages with actually is unified.
Yeah, so we have an example in terms of unify our customer experience, and we have an example around small businesses, right? So, and we partner with VMLY&R in order to do that, and how we can unify the silos within the organization, right? And the idea was to work closely with small business and understand what they need and what they wanted to see from us, right? So we learned from them in general and what exactly they wanted. And what we learned is that there were several pain points in regards to technology, right? And into those pain points, what were those pain points, right? And what we learned was like, they need to understand that everything is working. They need to have that peace of mind of what everything is working, right? They also need to know where to go when something is not working, right? They also need to have a support 24/7, right? Usually they don't find that anywhere, right? They also need to have advice what's next, right? Okay, they bought something, but if they want to continue growing their company, their business, like they need to know advice or to help them identify what is next and how I continue to grow, right? And they also need to have a centralized view of all their technology, right? Usually in big organizations, you go and buy something from one part of the organization, then support from another and all of that. So they need to have a centralized view on that. So knowing all those pain points, we work together to unify all of that, right? And get to a centralized view of an end-to-end customer experience, right? And with that, we created kind of a digital hub that is basically a web application design to combine critical product ownership content with product support for our customers, right? And basically what we are giving is to the IT decision-making and the business owners the ability to be able to manage an easy solution to manage their Dell Tech assets, right? So this is what we have been always for the last 35 years supporting and making sure that we are helping and supporting a small business, but we want to get it to the next level in the idea of we want to make sure that we are this trusted partner, and we want to make sure that we are creating this end-to-end customer experience from sales to support.
That's great. And it's really interesting to hear you talk about how you've really shifted the organizational focus to be understanding the customer pain points, their needs, and building solutions that are around the customer rather than in a siloed fashion, each group within Dell building their own unique, the unique offering. It really has to come together in a unified way. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Francesca, you talked earlier about some of the changes that are happening, working from home, all of us here today dialing in from a remote place and connecting. When we think about changing in the experience era to navigate that experience era, it's not just about being centric to our customers. It's about a new way of engaging our employees to help them in times of concern, to help them to be productive, to inspire them, to drive the collaboration that you both have been talking about. I wonder, Francesca, can you continue on? Talk a bit about what you've done in this time of change and how employee experience has factored into that.
Yeah, and I will tell you, first of all, I don't know if you are aware, but Dell's cultures, one of Dell's cultural pillar is remote working, right? It's part of our DNA. So, and for the last 10 years, 20% of the workforce of Dell was already working remote, right? So then when COVID hit, over the weekend, we were able to shift to 60% of the workforce to start working remote, right? So it was a big deal. It was challenging and it was scary, especially for some organizations that were not able or were not working remote, but we were able to do it. And also now that we are a little more stable, right? The adrenaline already wearing off, right? Let me tell you a little bit of how I'm handling and a little bit about myself. For example, I have 4 kids. And my 4 kids are in elementary school. So my oldest just started 5th grade a couple of weeks ago. School started like almost 3 weeks. And I have a set of triplets that are just started 2nd grade, right? My husband also works at Dell, and we have a dog. So my colleagues usually tell me, oh, your life is a little complicated. And when COVID started, my life got a lot complicated, you can say, right? And on top of that, on January, we decided to remodel our house without knowing that the house was very important in this period, right? We were going to stay a lot of time in the house. So we didn't know that. And we decided to tear down our kitchen, our living room, and our backyard. So no kitchen, no living room, and no backyard for all this period. So terrible idea, but we didn't know, and COVID hit. So throughout these months, we have been challenging ourselves how to settle as a family, and how do we be able to divide and conquer as a family to be able to be successful, right? And so everybody within the family can be successful. And what I learned from this experience with my family is that communication is critical, right? And that learning also moved me to Dell, right? How critical is communication? And within my teams also is what you learned, right? Communication is critical within family, teams, or anybody. Communication is critical for success because everybody needs to understand how you are moving, right? So within Dell, we are continue evolving, we're continue learning on this environment, right? It's not that we are there, but we continue every week, continue evolving. I will tell you, I'm still learning how I can improve within my teams and organization. I'm right now missing interactions that I used to have, for example, going around the world because I used to travel a lot. I miss that interaction with teams that I have with China, Japan, and all of that. So now I'm starting to have like virtual trips to meet those teams. And also miss interactions in the hallway, right? So I'm finding creative ways to try to figure out how do I get that, because I know this is not going to change soon, right? So I need to find creative ways to get it. But I would like to also set like in this environment, people are getting burnout. So it's important to call out that I read a couple of articles that it says that we are working 20% more than we used to work pre-COVID, right? Mm-hmm. The lines are blurring between when we start to work and when we end to work, right? And there is also a lot on top of what we're doing with work, homeschooling, homework, taking care of small kids and all of that. So people are getting burnout. So we need to encourage people. If you have teams, you need to encourage people to take mental breaks, to take vacation, even if they don't have anywhere to go. They need to take breaks.
That's great. You are definitely a role model for a lot of people managing the unique dynamics and the 4 children and a dog under a house in construction. No doubt that's quite challenging. So congrats to you for everything you're leading during that time. I'm going to switch a little bit, gear switch a little bit. I want to talk about partnership, and we talk about navigating the experience era. It leads us into conversation around topics of technology and data and human-centered design. But Daly, talk a bit about creativity. Where does creativity fit in the experience era?
Sure. Yeah, that's a topic of debate and discussion many days, right? So, and I think it comes down to the definition of creativity, right? So I think sometimes we, and my team includes package design, advertising content, obviously all the content on our own platforms and e-commerce, and all of those have different requirements and I say acceptance criteria for what we call creativity. And I start with the fundamentals of creativity for me are relevance, right? To that audience and consumer and in the right context. Does it communicate what the consumer needs? Is it quick to mind and easy to find? And from there, we have the opportunity to then, what we call be creative. And I think sometimes that's misconstrued to be something other than what I just described, which is relevant, easy to mind, quick to mind, easy to find, that are really essential to having the ability to do anything beyond that. So I think it's really important in the era of data and technology and innovation to get that right, and then to make sure that creativity is contextually applied to that new dynamic. And again, it doesn't always mean being big and explosive and what we used to call creative. Sometimes it's little things that matter. It's imagery, it's flow, it's what's in the picture, and in some cases, what's not in the picture. Simplicity sometimes matters. So I think it requires us, again, just like in all the other transformations, to redefine and continuously define by the context what creativity means. And more importantly, how creativity creates value for the end user.
That's really interesting. I think as you've talked about your direct-to-consumer efforts and the need to be creative and be relevant, just to continue on that theme, what role can we expect the experience practice to have to actually take consumer input into driving new ways of serving the products you have, maybe even new product development? Are we really truly being demand driven, and are we really meeting the needs of customers and what you offer?
Right. It's a great question. I think it's more essential than ever. And I would say that we've been talking a lot about transformation and speed. And I think the speed is really an important aspect of that, right? We see so much information quickly. How do we make sure it sort of gets across the enterprise to all those different touch points you just talked about in a meaningful way? Because, and it's not doing it fast for the sake of doing it fast. It's doing it fast to close gaps. It's doing fast to meet consumers where they're behaving and as their demands change. So maybe it's not doing it fast, it's doing it at the appropriate pace. Let's maybe we'll reframe it that way. And if that's fast, then do it fast. If that's at the current pace, then do it at the current pace. But right now we're seeing such an acceleration in those demands and the requirements that sometimes we don't have in place, that it requires us to feel like we're moving really, really fast. So, but that experience should be what defines it. And again, experience at those touch points based on what's relevant, what's needed, what is the consumer demand or job that we're trying to solve. And so that partnership has become ever more important. I think I described earlier, when we look at some of the components of our Ready, Set, E website, you can see elements from all of those things you talked about in that dinner plate. There's content in there, there's data, there's learning, and that stuff's used not just in that platform, but across our ecosystem, even to what you described to products. There's some product bundles on that site that we're testing to understand how people build baskets and what elements they put together, how frequently they replace those or replenish those products. And that transfers to our total business. So it's not just within that, what traditionally was a siloed execution, but as you said, it affects our entire consumer and customer landscape.
That's great. Francesca, anything within the world of Dell that you're seeing change and evolve in regards to customer expectations and needs and really driving products and delivery of services in new ways?
Yeah, overall, things that are changing, right? In terms of products, in terms of media, in terms of services. So everything is changing since, not right now, but everything has been changing for the last couple of years, right? So if we look more around media, right, we see that we used to have a limited set of media channels, right? If we think about just, for example, newspaper, digital media, catalog, and billboard, right? We used to have just this set of media channels. And now with digital growing and evolving so much, we have a lot of more media channels, right, that are growing exponential and increasing drastically, right? We have search and mobile that are getting really, really important. And on top of that, we have more layers like influencers, social media platforms, and you get more new social platforms like TikTok and new ones that you need to get used to it then, right? And on top of that, you get artificial intelligence, machine learning that you also need to incorporate into your plans right now, right? So there are a lot of things that are continue evolving that we need to start thinking about, right? And we need to start thinking how we allocate and prioritize that resources to continue getting ahead of the curve, right? And also matching that to the KPIs that we have, right? So KPIs such as acquisition, development, digital transformation, innovation, to make sure that we are matching everything together, right? And also making sure that we are working with our digital partners in regards to, we are driving the latest technologies with the latest innovation to make sure that we are growing our brand and making sure our message look authentic to our customers, right? And as well, making sure that we are looking the hard way and understanding, are we sure we should continue investing in vehicles such as print or catalog, and does it make sense or not? And how do we incorporate artificial intelligence and machine, right? And another thing is that we need to look in what it will be in the next decade, right? And I think in the next decade is that marketing, it will be, and how we'll transform will be a marriage between creative, data, and technology, right? And as a marketing, we need to be prepared for that. And we need to move our organization towards that, right? And it will not be just marketing as a silo. We need to think end to end, right? Because that will be evolved to the customer experience. How do we move towards that?
Yeah, Francesca, I love the notion of what we're doing today to help prepare for the future. And I think when we come out of a year like 2020, when there's been so many challenges from a business standpoint, economically, we're all under huge pressure to reduce costs, to drive efficiency. And no doubt that plays a role in the difficulty of making investments, of thinking about the future. Economist Tim Harford talks about how efficiency can actually be an enemy of change, because at the time you're making investments in innovation in the future, it's hard to justify, and you don't really need it till you need it, right? So I'd love to hear from both of you about what you're doing to tackle that. How do you justify investments in some of the new talent required, some of the new expertise required to support this this notion of the experience era and how we're changing the experience? And Delu, I'll turn to you to answer that first.
Sure. Great question. And I think what we found is there's actually quite a pragmatic solution to that, is that when we think about the challenges you just talked about, efficiency, effectiveness, and still moving that forward, and then all of our businesses are still going to be looking at growth, right? And that's even if we've been down in some areas, we want to get back to growth, or if we've been up, we want to continue that momentum. So what we've done is using those capabilities that we built for when we need them, and we've come a long way. Let's say we've gotten 60 or 70% of what we thought we would need from new technology, new capability, et cetera. We've done a mapping going forward to say, how do we apply those existing capabilities to our current commercial requirements? And as we build on to complete that roadmap, we add them in very purposeful service of our commercial enterprise. And that's today and tomorrow. And the good news is our business is very iterative, right? So if we plan for a quarter, we like to look 3 to 5 years out, but next quarter is going to require us to either do the same things or make adjustments. Most times it requires adjustments. So we try and map that against very pragmatic application to our commercial enterprise. And we've been very pleased with how much that prepares us for the future as we're solving for today. It was an idea that those were binary. And what we're finding is they're very integrated, because you said it earlier, we're hardwired to resist change. And that's largely been found to be true, right? So if we just keep doing what we see that's in front of us, we're going to make progress. We have to. We have no choice. So I think we can do both in conjunction with each other if we just have enough foresight and vision to see just around that corner. So, and again, it's not as daunting as we've all thought it would be to be able to invest in both.
That's great. Francesca, how are you seeing around corners and making the investments that you need to for the future?
Yeah, and I will respond that, giving you an example of what we are living right now, right? So right now, even if difficult, knowing the situation is like, should we go and invest more or not, right? And constantly in today's world, I'm constantly asking myself these questions, right? Should we pull back? Should we stay the course? Should we invest more, right? And this is the constant questions that my team and I are usually facing, and having those questions that we always discuss with business leaders, right? What we should do, knowing what's going on with the economy, and what is the path that we should do, right? And we're working with my team around different scenarios, right? Knowing that the future is really important to continue investing in technology, innovation, and data, right? And what is going on, but knowing as well that right now, currently, the economy is affecting us, right? How do you balance between the today and the future, right? And what is next? And when you run all these scenarios, you realize that usually the answer, what you get is that, or you should continue stay the course, or you should accelerate, right? Knowing that you should need to continue investing in technology and in innovation, right? And it goes in regards when you put the customer first, right? And you need to make sure that you are doing the right for the customer, right? Because when you think about, even in this scenario where we are living right now, most people's in business, this is one of the most difficult time for them, right? And when you think about technology, they need technology for everything. Technology is essential for them, right? So we need to continue investing for that. And we are experts and we can provide advice. So we need to continue supporting them. So if we don't do that and we don't invest and we don't do right for our customers and we pull back, we are not helping our customers, right? So that is one way to look at it. And with that, we can continue advocating for more resources, for more investment around what is coming in the future, right? And how do we invest more in customer experience, knowing that it's critical to invest in customer experience and what is next in regards to data, technology, and innovation.
That's great. I'm going to
add one thing to that, David.
Please.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier investing in places where we don't have a roadmap or there's no precedence. You had the left to right on your imagery. And I think that's an important thing is sometimes we get asked to show a case study or a precedent or show me exactly, I've heard the term, be definitive about what the return is going to be. Mm-hmm. And I think as Francesca just described, it's not always definitive. And sometimes we're in uncharted territory. So you have to be a little bit comfortable with moving forward based on what you know and just be clear about what you don't know and get comfortable with that. There will be things that we don't know, that there's no data for, and there's no proof of the outcome, right? And I think that requires certain people to get very comfortable with that. And that's transformative. We've talked a lot about transformation, but that is a transformative behavior that you move forward without a definitive outcome. And that's required in this environment. And it's proven that to be true, right?
So you're saying you don't have a crystal ball?
Magic 8 ball is my favorite.
Yeah, there we go.
No, we would love to have a crystal ball. Do you have one?
No, unfortunately I don't. But I do think that one of the topics I want to land on for my last questions will maybe let us know what's on your mind. Then I want to switch to some of the audience questions because they're coming in fast and some great topics to continue with. But the question I have for you is in my setup slides I talked about disruption effects. Certainly COVID is one that we've talked a lot about, and it's on the minds of everyone, no doubt, across the world. But it's not always just about something like an unexpected thing like COVID. It could be factors happening within the marketplace. There could be regulatory changes, oftentimes new entrants, new competitors really come on the scene and disrupt us and force us to respond. And I think part of navigating the experience era is being a couple of steps ahead and understanding, as we talked about, customer expectations, having systems in place to deliver a great experience and to connect the dots and all those touch points that both of you talked about. But just the last question I have is, what's keeping you up at night? What disruption effects do you anticipate or perhaps fear the most? What's maybe on the other side, if it's something that inspires you, what are you most excited about, and what are you using that to inspire your teams? Delu, I'll turn to you first for that.
Okay. The thing that that I'm excited about and equally working in this transformation space is the convergence of retail and media. And I think that's disruptive as we've talked about the ways we acquire consumers and engage them and manage their experiences. Those things are reaching scale now. Right? The platforms that communicate directly with end consumers and buyers married up with retail. And we've seen it across a number of those big platforms we've seen growing very big in e-commerce. And they're not just affecting the digital space, they're affecting the offline space. And as they continue to bring media forward, which is how we engage with consumers, and we're seeing it from lots of them, that's going to be transformative in how we think about the concept of marketing, the concept of content, and the concept of experience as we engage within those ecosystems, and more importantly, across those ecosystems. Because they're all developing slightly differently at different maturity and pace, but they're all reaching the same consumers. And we have to interact with and support those consumers if that's where they choose to participate. So that's going to create new transformation challenges for us from, as I said, content, data, supply, product choices, merchandising, all of those things. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for us to reframe our total go-to-market strategies if we participate in any at any scale.
That's great. Fran, thoughts on your end? What's inspiring you or keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I am in the same lines of Delu. I agree with you. What is disrupting and is all this acceleration of digital transformation, right? And if you think about it, is all these kind of like desegmentation, basically, right? In the sense of like, at the end user or consumer, everybody is the same, right? So there's no kind of like segmentation, is just one end user or consumer, right? So there is no like lines between these segments. So it's just one consumer. So it's how fast this digital world is moving, and how we can move faster as an organization to make sure that we can be ahead of the curve, and then look into like, hey, no, this is B2B, this is SB, this is consumer, this is commercial, because at the end, it's just one consumer, right? And how do we think about the retail world? Because then you are competing against yourself.
That's great. I'm going to actually pivot off of that point, Francesca, and pick up one of the first audience questions that rose to the top. And that's around personalization. You talked about individual customer needs. You know, the promise of true personalization has been out there for years and decades. Now we have the technology, now we have the data science, now we have the capabilities to offer more and more personalization. But what does that mean in your world, Francesca? If you could go first, and then Delu, what are you doing to invest in personalization? What does that mean within your businesses?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And we are working really to move towards personalization. We are not there yet, but what we are looking is, we have personalizations, but in silos, basically, right? And what we are looking, especially as the topic here is customer experience end-to-end, that's what we are looking, personalization end-to-end in the full customer journey, right? And that's what we are working towards. On like, we want to make sure that we have personalization through the customer journey, right? And that's what we are working on, that technology, to make sure that we have a full personalization, right? And making sure that you as a customer know exactly when you interact with Dell, you have a full relationship with Dell, and you don't lose that relationship when you are through the funnel. And that's what we're working towards.
That's great. Thanks, Fran. Delu?
Yeah, I'll build on that and say, again, personalization is another term, as you said, has been around for decades. I think everyone should look at what it really means. So the idea that she just described is right on. It's relevance at every touch point. Having worked in this space a long time, it used to mean know everything you need to know about a consumer so I can decide one thing to do for them. And I think what we've learned over time is you may only need to know one thing to be completely relevant and deliver what the consumer needs. And I always joke, I said, I don't need to know their shoe size to know what food they're looking for when they're literally typing in, I'm looking for this item, right? Answer the question and then build on that. So I think we need to make sure that we use the data that we have to be better for that consumer and be highly relevant, and over time learn what they're willing to share and only use it if it creates value for them. And that is really, I think, can reframe the speed at which we can provide more and more relevance in that consumer experience.
That's great. The next question from the audience has to do with, what is your recommendation for the areas that you see a need for additional investment? So again, the plate of ingredients, is there an ingredient that's not on that plate that you want to build today? And Delu, just continue on with you for a moment. At Conagra, what are you building next? And what do you see that would be a good investment? And maybe some advice for folks out in the audience who are looking to invest.
Yeah, so we're trying to look at demand, right? What's trending? And there are lots of places to understand what's happening in that space. Right? What are people looking for? What can't they find? What gaps are in the marketplace? And the question is, are they gap fillers or are they innovations? And that obviously changes the speed to market. And that's two things to answer. And the third thing is, look in your own portfolio. You might already have it. We've done things where, for example, as the keto-friendly trend came live, we did a reverse audit of our existing portfolio and found hundreds of products that already supported that lifestyle, but we wouldn't have ever looked backwards. We would have said, we need to make something new. But we looked at the data and said, actually, look at the things we already have in the pantry. And we found, again, hundreds of products that already could support that lifestyle. So I think, we can always look forward, but we also look within your own portfolio. You might be surprised at the capabilities that you already have, right? As the context shift, they might be more relevant than ever.
Great, Fran?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I think we need to invest in data. Data is critical. Data is king. So we need to think about, like, how do we make sure that you own your data, know exactly. And when we talk about personalization, in order to do personalization, also you need to have the data, right? The other thing is technology, right? You need to keep up with the technology. So you need to continue to invest in technology. And the other thing is talent, right? You need to keep with talent, knowing that the digital acceleration is growing in a faster rate. You need to have talent that keep up on that digital acceleration, right? Because you need to have that talent that understand what is coming, what is going on, and what are the trends. So those are the things that you need to focus on. And the other one is content. Content is also critical to continue growing, because that is where also the trends is moving around content, right? If you want to have a relationship with the customer, you need to have content.
That's great. We are approaching the hour, and I want to make sure we have time to wrap up. There are so many more great questions. I want to thank everyone in the audience who's been posting questions. Hopefully we covered a lot of the topics that were of interest to you. I'm going to give some final thoughts myself, and then I'll turn to the two of you to do so as well, and then give Chris a chance to join us to wrap things up. What I'm hearing are some really great thoughts around the need to approach CX as an entire transformation agenda. It's not about just building individual expertise or adding one or two people into the mix. It's about transforming the organization, inspiring and leading and growing our talent. It's about how we become demand-centric to meet the needs of customers, to offer products and services that reflect those needs, and to build things that are helping customers live better, happier lives, to meet those pain points or make their lives better. It's really exciting to hear about all the things you're doing at Conagra and at Dell. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you both for the time today and for the great insights that you've both shared. Just for the next minute or so, Delu, any thoughts you want to share as we wrap up? Any things that you want to give for advice to folks in the audience?
Sure, and thanks for having us today, and great to participate with you, David and Francesca. I've learned a lot today as well. So I would say that, number one, that in this transformational environment, and as we work differently and continue to move ourselves forward, is over-communicate. And that's, we talked about today, and what I've learned in this whole process is things you used to do every month, you might do every week. You used to do it every week, do it every day. And things you used to do every day, you might do it multiple times a day. So it does transform the way we work. But technology can assist us in doing our daily tasks, our communication tasks, and our executions. So really, I love that, Francesca. Stay focused on the technology, and you may already have it. Let's really think about how we leverage it to make our lives enable and make our lives work in this environment, because we're not going to go backwards. It's going to continue going forward. And that's for content, that's for our websites, it's for our customer engagement, it's for e-commerce. Technology is going to be our friend, and we need to make sure that we're getting the most out of those investments.
Thanks, David. Francesca?
No, thank you for having us. As Delu mentioned, I also learn a lot here. And I want you to to tell you guys that we're entering a frictionless world, right? So in order to drive that, we need to have frictionless marketing, frictionless product, frictionless organization. So in order to drive that and not have silos, we need to continue driving transformation. So keep pushing for that, keep looking for the data technology and all of that to be able to drive frictionless world that we are entering right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. Chris, I think you're going to join us on screen, and I'll let you wrap up for the day. But again, thank you to AdAge. Thank you, Delu. Thank you, Francesca, for a great panel.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Great presentation to you, to Francesca, and to Delu as well, and to our audience for joining us today. Now, I'd like to let everyone know that you can experience this presentation again on demand when it's archived, so that you can review it again. The content was rich, and the slides obviously are indispensable. So just keep an eye peeled on your inbox, your email inbox. You'll get a notice when the archive is ready for review and download. So on behalf of our panelists today, David Schulman from our sponsor, VMLY&R, Francesca Perotti from Dell, and Delu Jackson from Conagra Brands, thanks so much for attending. Have a great and prosperous day. Bye.